Alright everyone, good evening and welcome back to Archeage 101. This is Jalan with the Paradox Gaming Network, and today I'm going to be talking about healers, and this is part 1 of the healers video. As always, if you need to get in touch with me, you can reach me at support@paradoxgaming.net. You can reach me on Discord at Jalan, #8446, or feel free to join me in the Paradox Archeage 101 Discord, which the link is there below, and I will also put the link in the notes below the video. So there's a lot on our agenda for this evening. The first is that I'm going to break some misconceptions about healing that have existed since 1.0. The game has come a long way in the last 3 years, and we need to shatter some of these misconceptions. Next, I'm going to talk about key stats, specifically the ones you want to stack as much as possible. And then I'm going to do a brief ability overview, as well as an abyssal overview and an ancestral overview. I'm then going to show you some synergy between abilities, and then I'm also going to talk about how two healers have to develop synergy to maximize healing. I'm going to talk about some common classes, and then that's going to be it. You'll notice on today's agenda there is no discussion about equipment. That's for two reasons. Number one, this video is already going to be pretty long. And number two, I want to make sure that I properly prepare the slides and the train of thought. I started doing that this evening, and it's going to take me a couple of hours to pull all the stuff out of the Archeage gear builder so that I can compare apples to apples. So for all of this information, I want you to take it with a grain of salt. I'm going to put this link in the notes as well. This is the compendium of everything healer that has existed since the beginning of Archeage. I want you to take everything I say with a grain of salt as well. Healing is an art, so if you don't necessarily believe with something I say, go ahead and challenge me. We can talk about it. Very recently, somebody actually convinced me to change a skill point from one to the other, and I think it's working out good. For this video, one thing I want you to realize is that the assumption is that you're at your end game and that you're level 55 with max Ancestrals. If you aren't, I'm going to be doing a video on how to level as a healer just as soon as the servers come back up and I can roll a low-level character. Alrighty, to start our evening off, I want to break some of those misconceptions. If you do go over to the Complete Healer's Guide on the Archeage forums, you're going to find a lot of discussions on about how if you don't have Aurmancy plus Vitalism, you're not considered a true main healer. And they also talk about how you have to be running Spell Shield and Thwart stacking. Spell Shield plus Antithesis still does combo for an instant heal. I don't run this. I find that the 32% healing debuff on Spell Shield actually causes more problems for me than it solves. And also, I've never run Thwart stacking because I've always chosen to run Vitalism 13, Soncraft 12, Aurmancy 3. Early on in the beginning, I found that Songcraft offered a lot more options. Healing him especially, if you use this and you're clustered up, it's going to do a ton of healing. Rhythmic Renewal is a ground placement, and it's basically one and done. You cast it, and as long as everybody stays in it, they're getting the healing. And Ode to Recovery. Ode to Recovery has always been strong. In the last patch, it actually got made stronger, and I'll talk about that when I go through the abilities. And then the two passives in Songcraft now, Zeal and Disciplined Performance. When I get to those, you're going to understand why I've always chosen to run Zeal versus choosing to leave it off my build. So the key stats, obviously Spirit is going to give you healing power. But what a lot of people don't realize is 30 Spirit gives you about a 1% crit heal rate. So that's why a lot of people choose to max stack their Spirit. Realize in your end game, some of your weapons are going to be full Spirit, and you won't be getting stamina off of them. I do caution you on this. Great Club users and T7 users that choose the all Spirit option, you are leaving yourself with a bit of a stamina hole While I understand that you can heal a lot, you have to be able to get those heals off. Healing power is your other major one. 70% of it's going to come from your weapon. Healing, there is a stat called healing. It is not healing power. It is a straight bonus to your skills, and it also affects healing pots. If you did not know that, you don't get the same healing from a Nui's Nova that a healer gets. They get more because their healing should be somewhere in the 14 to 19 range. Critical heal rate, you want as much of this as you can get. You should be somewhere in around the 40-42% range. You'll be somewhere right around the 47-50 range when Zeal procs. Critical heal bonus is obviously how much extra healing critical does. And again, you want as much of this as possible, especially when you get a good critical heal rate and a critical heal bonus. And then cast time. Cast time can only go as low as 40%. So if you see yourself getting closer and closer to 40%, realize that it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get any lower. And a lot of people haven't realized what some of the new Vitalism abilities do. They themselves reduce cast time. So here we are. I'm going to jump right into Vitalism. And what I've done is I've pulled 4 skills out at a time. Holy Bolt is the primary source of Vitalism DPS. Now, I know that is strange for people to hear, that Vitalism is DPS. Holy Bolt is a great ability that gets knocked by a lot of people. You do damage to your enemies. And if you put Mirror's Light onto somebody and they have the Blessing buff, as long as they're within 15 meters of your target, they will get healed. Now, a big change in 3.5 that came is it reduced self-healing off of Holy Bolt by 50%. Because it was absolutely ridiculous. You couldn't be beaten in arena if you were a cleric. All you had to do was keep throwing Holy Bolt. But it still does full heals on other people. A great example of where to use this is in Serpentis in the last room. You can literally be an extra DPS on that fight and keep the tank up. Obviously, Mirror's Light is a cleanse or a curse. And I'm not going to go into all of the details about the abilities. I'm just going to give you the overview. You need to get into those abilities and really dig into what they do. Antithesis is your primary heal, and it has a huge ancestral modifier, and I'm going to get to. And Resurgence is a heal over time. Now, in a standard build, a Cleric, a Templar, are going to have all 4 of these abilities. A Caretaker may or may not take Holy Bolt, depending on how they choose to run their build. The next 4, Resurrection, pretty common sense. Skewer is AoE damage, and it also has a major Ancestral. Mend is your AoE with a lot of quirks, and I'm going to go over those quirks because those you need to understand. And then Aaron Zeb's Boon is 25 to all stats. And if you have the Ode of Vitalism, it's going to +1 up your Aaron Zeb Boon level. So it's going to give 30 to all stats. Renewal is another heal over time. I do not run it. I just find I don't have the points for it, and I don't find a good time to fit it in. It also duplicates the effect that the Mend is going to have when I show you that. I do know Paladins do like to run this because it is a big heal that is up until they get hit and it triggers. Fervent Healing is a single target, but it is huge heals, and it also is highly modified by its Ancestral. Infuse is a mana transfer, and I do not recommend anybody to use this unless they are a Great Club user and they are taking advantage of the Obsidian Great Clubs that do a heal with the Infuse, or if they are running with a fellow healer that is running Infuse. And then Whirlwind's Blessing is an attack speed and move speed buff for allies and debuff for enemies. For your abyssal skills, abyssal petrification, you stone your target for 18 seconds. And being on the receiving end of this all the time, this is a very annoying skill. Rising Hatred just doubles your abyssal charges. And Defy Death is your combat res now. You res up to 6 allies within 6 meters. Unless you have 6 abyssal charges, you res them all within 20 meters. Now to go over the passives, Painful Recharge, 3% damage into mana. Good if you're doing a lot of soloing and grinding, but not really that effective. Not that it's not nice to have free mana, but you need the points elsewhere. Quick Recovery will reset all healing skills when you take critical damage. I also do not run this skill. I don't run it because my build includes 4K resilience, and I do everything in my power to avoid taking critical damage. Spirit Growth increases spirit by 9%, so that's just a given. Alms reduces cast time by 9%, also pretty much a given. Invigorated Healing, crit heal bonus at 25%, again, a huge number, so it's a given. Defiance is complicated, and the demo is going to be right around the corner. And then Joyous Spirit reduces all cooldowns in the Vitalism tree by 20%. Alrighty, so I'm in game, and I will hope you will forgive the ridiculously large icons, but I feel they're going to be needed for some of this demonstration. So as I said, we needed to talk about cast time and how you're going to get your cast time. And I talked about how Defiance is a bit of a complicated passive. So what I want you to see is that two things happen. Every time you use Antithesis, Mend, or Fervent Healing, you generate a stack of Prayer. And Prayer decreases your cast time by 2% per stack. And it will trigger Sacrifice at 5 stacks. Now, Sacrifice consumes 12 to 16% of your current health when triggered. It decreases your cast time by 10%, and that's the 2% stacked. And then it adds a powerful bonus effect to Mend and Infuse. It lasts 15 seconds, but it prevents you from gaining additional stacks of Prayer. Well, that would just simply make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my combat log a little bit more. And I'm going to, on my other screen, get ready to take a freeze. So what I'm going to do is, as I cast this on myself, you see 2%, 5 stacks. And then I'm going to keep doing this just a second. And there I've procced Zeal. You're going to see a really fast Mend with his shield. And now I'm just waiting a little bit because I want to make sure that I catch this, and this should freeze. There you go. You can see that Sacrifice is up, but I want you to also see on this side of my screen where I'm highlighting over. It consumed 12 to 16% of my current health, which a lot of people have told me that that's scary. I don't want to lose like 15% of my health. Well, look at the combat log, and you will see that while I did in fact lose 650 health, I ended up getting 3,119 of that absorbed through my natural damage mitigation. So really no reason to not try to maximize Sacrifice. So I'm going to cancel that out. All right, as I screwed up the previous one, let's try this again. I'm going to simply stick to Antithesis and Fervent Healing. And there's my 2 stacks. There's my 3 stacks. Here's my 4th stack. There's my 5th stack. Now you see where I've covered over. First of all, here that omnipotent ward that comes up when you throw mend, it usually only lasts for 3 seconds. Well, under sacrifice, it doubles. Also, if you notice, this buff appeared because I used mend when sacrifice was triggered. So as I said, I choose to not pick up renewal because I can basically, through proper timing, get it for free. I can sacrifice my I can consume my sacrifice buff, and I can grant renewal to all allies, and I can increase the omnipotent ward by 100%. This is an unbelievably powerful combo, but I've noticed that a lot of younger clerics and younger healers don't actually properly apply this. You constantly see them doing what I did when I screwed up, and they throw their mend on their 4th stack, and then unfortunately their mend cooldown doesn't get them back around in time. Now, as we move into Aurmancy, Aurmancy is the major support tree for healers, and I'm not going to go through these too much. I am going to tell you that, as I said, a lot of theory testing and theory crafting, and I have recently switched Thwart back into my build, and I'll show you that in a minute. The rest of these, I will talk about Spell Shield in the Ancestral Skills. In some of my videos, you'll notice that I used to run a Vicious Implosion. That's because I have enough effective hit points and tankiness to be on the front line and try to disrupt the enemy while we push. I can tell you right now that since I'm going to a new server due to the evolution, I'm going to be going right back into a more traditional healer role until I see how things are panning out. Again, the next row, teleportation, it allows for mobility. For some classes, it's really good. For Templars, I know a lot of Templars run this. For my build as a cleric, I just don't have a point for it. I would love to have it again, but I can't afford it. Health Lift is the same. It is a buff, but if you have the Ballad of Aurmancy, it increases it by 1. Meditation, really good in PvE situations or grinding. You can restore mana for free. Shrug It Off. Shrug It Off is interesting in that it cancels all stuns and impales and grants immunity for 5 seconds. I have seen some bards that run Shrug It Off so that they can shrug it off straight into Alarm Call. That's actually really effective. Liberation grants immunity to Shackle, Silence, and Interrupt. This is more of a PvE application, in my opinion. I do know some people who run it so that they can make sure that their Mage Ball concept works. Leech is another one. It's a great Aurmancy skill, but a healer is going to struggle to have a point for it. Protective Wings, immunity to all magic damage. I have seen this used a lot by healers. It's necessary for some PvE fights, and I'm going to talk about its ancestrals when we get there. And Mirror Warp is just another mobility ability, but it is in left and right versus forward. As far as the Abyssal, I don't have them, so I'm not going to talk about them. If you're interested in getting them, you'll have to do your own research. And then the passives, absorb damage, recycle 7% of the damage taken back into life. I find this to be just a no-brainer. It restores life. Hearthen, where it doubles the duration of Inspire. I don't even have the points to get 4 points into Aurmancy. I do know that Templars take this because Templars are a Vitalism Aurmancy build. Inspiration Cloak decreases all damage by 100 for 3 seconds after being crit. I don't... 100... we're dealing in a game now with 14,000 Arc Lightnings. I don't see 100 as useful. Unassailable, a 1% chance to become immune to all damage for 2 seconds. Sure, I know some people run it because of that 1% chance. I find the point is spent better elsewhere. Improved targeting increases accuracy by 8%. Honestly, if your accuracy isn't 100%, I don't know what to tell you. We're mages at heart. We don't need accuracy. Magic Condenser increases crit and crit rate by 6%. Magic crit rate, or I'm sorry, healing crit rate. While this is good, when I get to Zeal, I'll show you why I've never run this deep into Aurmancy. And then Teleportation Discipline allows for multiple warps. Those are in those videos where you see the guy warp away and he takes 9 hops away. Most people are really annoyed when that happens. All right, so as I said, very recently, someone has convinced me to put Thwart back into my build, and I was hesitant to do that at first. As you can see, it's in there, and I really don't even have it assigned to a very good place. I'm still trying to figure out when to put it in my rotation, but I'm going to hit it, and then I'm going to lock this in. So what you can see is that as long as it is up, the cooldown on skills goes down pretty dramatically. So Antithesis cooldown decreases by 0.6 seconds. So my cooldown is 4 seconds. When I hit my Inspire, it goes down to 3.5 seconds. And that is actually pretty impressive when you start needing to be throwing off a bunch of spells at the same time. You can, as long as you keep your thwart up, it's going to keep that timer from getting too high, because nothing is worse than dying when you don't have a heal available. Alrighty, moving right along into Songcraft. I have always found the Songcraft tree to be incredibly interesting, incredibly intricate when it comes to healing. So this is going to be the one that I spend just as much time on as I did with Vitalism. Your first 4 abilities, Critical Discord is the main DPS of Soncraft, but it's not based on healing power, so unless you want to combo it to Fear with the Startling Strain, don't even bother taking it. Startling Strain is a stun and a charm, and Startling Strain is the basis of the Bard, because the Bard will play all of the other songs that I mentioned, but as long as it's throwing Startling Strain out against enemies, not only is his team getting the benefits, but whoever is charmed is getting the debilitating effect. Quick Step increases movement speed. Dissonance is an interesting change in what they did with it. They took it from being a cast time to being an instant to a spot, and I'm going to show you that real quick because it's one of those ground placement abilities. But as you can imagine, trying to find a good time to throw that out while you're being overrun and while you're healing, it is pretty difficult. But as you can see, I'm going to cursor over it and leave it up for a second. The amount of debilitation it does is pretty big, and that big one at the bottom does not stop ongoing perform skills. This is a way to really bombard clustered up enemies, especially if you see that cast time 20%, this cripples a mage ball. Healing him, as I've said several times, it's a bouncing AoE heal. It will bounce from 1 person to 2 people and then 3 times more. It heals a lot for such a little skill. Hummingbird Ditty is a 9% cast time buff unless you have the Dance of Songcraft, and then it becomes a 10% cast time. Ode to Recovery is an AoE heal and buff, and Rhythmic Renewal is a ground AoE heal. Real quick, Bulwark Ballad is a defense bonus. Bloody Shanty is an attack bonus. Alarm Call lifts stuns in sleep and prevents for all allies, and it has a huge ancestral modification. The ancestral modifications on it are so big that Grief's Cadence is almost not even used anymore. The Abyssal Skills. Abyssal Echoes ends all your songs but continues them for the caster for 10 seconds. This is actually really, really good in a lot of situations because it keeps your healing power buff high, and it allows you to finish off some people with that higher buff status. And then Polymorphic Resonance. It prevents death by turning people into an animal where they recover health. I've never gotten this thing to work properly. I'm not sure if it's bugged or if it's just that it doesn't give people enough health to survive after they've reached critical death. So I very rarely run the Abyssal Songcraft skills, mainly because the Vitalism ones have Defy Death in them, and that's just so important for raid-based combat. The passives, again, the first one decreases interrupt chance by 50%. While that's good, there's just not enough points. Hold the Note. Songs last 15 seconds more. This is actually really good if you're going to straight bard, and you can afford to go an extra point into Songcraft. Up tempo decreases cast time, not cat time, cast time by 5%. Disciplined performance is complicated, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. Loudspeaker extends your range on your songs to 22 meters. Algoretto decreases your stun and silence time by 10%. And Zeal increases crit rate by 5% and critical damage and healing by 75%. Now, just to jump in real quick, and I'm going to bring this box up, and this is what you want to look at right there at the bottom. Bring this up so I know when I've hit Zeal. So you can hit Zeal on almost anything. And there you go. My Zeal's up 49%, 197.5%. I have, when Zeal is up, I have a 50% chance to heal. Now, what does that mean? Well, if I'm in the middle of a group and my Zeal pops, and I have, look at that, I have 4 seconds, I can throw a healing hymn, I can get my mend out, and I can get Ode to Recovery back up. Now, the other one that I said was awkward is Disciplined Performance. Now, as you see this one building up, the buff is called Rhythm, and it increases healing power and magic attack by 7, stacks up to 15 times. But look at that other one. It resets the cooldown of Startling Strain whenever a charmed target is killed, and it reduces the cooldown of Songcraft Skills by 0.4 seconds per stack. So I can throw out a healing hymn every 9 seconds. And if I'm a dedicated bard and I'm just throwing out healing hymn and dissonance and startling strain, I'm actually putting out so much healing that I'm rivaling a full-built Vitalism healer. So that original discussion where people said, "Oh, you can't be a primary healer unless you are a Vitalism Aurmancy," to me that's ridiculous. And if you're watching your buffs properly, you'll see. I'm going to drag this down. It's going to flip over to 8 seconds, and then I'm going to throw a mend. And if I click it right, I never even lost my stacks. I kept my stacks up the whole time. So I was able to throw out a mend in the middle of all of that. So I challenge anybody that says Bard healing isn't as good, if not better, than Vitalism. So now to get into the Ancestral skills real quick. If you are playing a healer with Vitalism and you have Antithesis, which you should, because I don't know why you'd be trying to play a healer without Antithesis, take Quake as your ancestral skill on Antithesis. It turns your Antithesis into an AoE that both heals all allies and harms all enemies within 6 meters of the target. Yes, it reduces the effectiveness, but the fact that it AoE heals or damages more than makes up for it. So I'll flip into game because I want you to see how important this is. Yes, my single target Antithesis would do 7626 damage, and that's not even fully buffed. And it would do 5566 to an enemy. But when I have Quake on, it is going to do it to all allies and all enemies. Even if you hit one ally and one enemy, you've already done more than the single target one would do. The other great thing about it is, during the mad chaos of Zerg combat, you no longer have to muck around with trying to find the target that's dying. You literally run up to him and you cast on yourself, and it's going to heal him. And what you can easily do in that situation is, I'm going to pretend that the Scarecrow is the person who's in trouble. I'm going to run up to them, and I'm going to Quake Antithesis. I'm going to healing him. I'm going to mend. I'm going to throw the healing circle down, and then I'll show you the other trick in a second. But hopefully not having to single target out that person gives me a wide array of better options. The other Antithesis Ancestral is Life, and it extends your range to 30 meters. It's good for archers who like to max range you in arena, so if you struggle in that first round, you can very quickly swap this out in between rounds. Skewer. Skewer's Ancestrals are also unbelievable. The first one, Flame, it allows you to summon 3 5-meter AoE skewers in a row, and it does really decent damage, and it combos with other skewers. So if other healers and anyone with occultism are dropping skewers, it gets pretty ridiculous pretty quickly. As you can see, skewers deal 6441 damage, and that's pretty ridiculous for a healer, but I cast it, and the next 2 are instant. So it's just, if you're trying to kill somebody, you basically incapacitate them for about 3 seconds. They take stacked damage. What's not to love? The other one, the Life Skewer, is the same as the normal one, but it heals the allies instead of hurting enemies, but it still impales the enemies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip into this one real quick, and that whole area just got healed instantly. It got healed for 3046, but if the people were standing where the skewers overlap, they got healed for 6k. So think about that. If you're true healing, all these ancestral skills have just opened up so many AoE heals for you. Finally, with the Fervent Healing, the 2 things about it are the Lightning, which is rapid fire heals with no cooldown. The cost doubles after each use, and you must not use for 10 seconds to reset the cooldown. It's important to note that Thwart, the Inspire, will not reduce this. And also, the Flame one, you can channel to build up a massive heal for a single target. So I enjoy the fact that I can throw about 30 of these at myself before I have to stop because I'm just out of mana. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to flip in the other one. And you know what's going to happen is I'm going to go to do something and all my skills are going to be wrong. So here's the other one. I hold and charge, and I'm recovering 25,000 health over 25 seconds. So that's 1,000 health a second. So I could charge that up, before I go in, and I could have stacked up Resurgence, so I basically would have been regenerating 3,000 health per second. Now, even if you can't get it all the way up, you're still, you're still recovering the 1,000 per second. It's just how many seconds you're recovering it for. To jump into the Aurmancy Ancestral Skills, Thwart. The stone thwart, I don't understand, and maybe you could ask a dark runner or somebody who uses it. It says it increases the damage taken by enemies by 20, not 20% or 20 something, just 20. But the missed one, as a healer, this missed one, as I said, it grants greater inspire to all allies in a 6-meter radius. If all the healers are kind of on top of each other, one healer or maybe two healers need to have missed thwart, and what that does is it frees up an extra point. And I'm going to talk about synergy between healers in a second, but just think about that. Since it's increasing your attack speed and your cooldowns, it is basically helping your cast speed. And when you get your cast time low enough, you need to increase your cast speed in order to be able to cast again inside your global cooldown. Spell Shield, Flame, reflects 32% of incoming damage, and Mist allows you to cast it on an ally. I love the concept of reflecting 32% of the incoming damage. If you watch over here with the Protective Wings, you also reflect 70% of magic damage back to the attacker. This is something I'm going to have to do a lot more testing on, but I just thought about the concept of what if you had a couple of people with Spell Shield on and they were throwing the Flame Protective Wings in their group and a mage got whipped into that group. How much damage would go back to him? And then the Mist Protective Wings projects the healing wings to a location. Situationally useful, I suppose. Again, I don't play with Protective Wings, so I'm not going to judge it one way or the other. The Soncraft Ancestral Skills are another group that are pretty impressive. Startling Strain, the life version increases beneficial effects by 30% to someone, which is actually a complete opposite of what Startling Strain normally does and charms a person. The Wave one is just an increase on Startling Strain. So if we come in here and we go to Songcraft, your basic one is stuns an enemy for 2 seconds and then they're charmed. This one is they're charmed for 24 seconds. So you lose the stun, but you charm them for 24 seconds. The Healing Hymn, the stone version, is no longer healing, but it's an AoE bouncing charm. This is huge if you have the ability to be a dedicated bard inside the middle of a raid. It means you could go Caretaker, or you could run a couple of other different builds that basically allow you to just absolutely grief an enemy formation. Or Wave. Wave, in my opinion, is more PvE related. Instead of restoring health, it restores mana. But the Wave will never bounce back to you. You could literally be standing next to the person, and if there's not another person there, it'll just hit them and go away. Finally, Alarm Call. Alarm Call life is so powerful that it just removes one harmful effect every 3 seconds. This is where I was talking about with the Death of Grief's Cadence. Why should I reduce a debuff by 3 seconds? I'm sorry, by 30%, when every 3 seconds I can just take an entire debuff off. Especially if I'm built to prevent sleep, stun, several other things, then I just have Alarm Call life as my bread and butter. But the single greatest overused, abused ancestral skill is Alarm Call Stone. And it's the one I use because we share the cheese. When I start casting that, everybody who walks into this circle is going to fall asleep. basically what the game has become is who can get their bard into position faster and start alarm calling it. It's very common to see fights go sleep, 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 and this is getting nerfed in 4.0, which I'm very thankful for. All right, I know that it's been a long video, so thank you for sticking with me. Let's just push on through and finish this part of it up. Your ability synergies, we've talked about a couple of them: Holy Bolt and Mirror's Light, Spell Shield and Antithesis, Startling Strain in your songs, those we've all mentioned. Mirror's Light in any heal, well, Mirror's Light increases heals by 15%. Resurgence, that heal over time, plus Antithesis or Mend. If the target has Resurgence on it, they'll gain 30% healing. And then Thwart plus Vitalism cooldowns, you've seen those. So just look at this slide and realize these are the things that you need to synergy with. And speaking of synergy, so many times I find that I'm working with a healer that has the exact same buffs that I have. You don't need both healers in a raid to have Aaron Zeb's Boon, Health Lift, and Hummingbird Ditty. That's 3 extra points to put somewhere else. If you have a 2-healer situation, one should be more bard orientated for buffs and Ode to Recovery. You want to have Ode to Recovery going all the time. 21 to 33% received healing. I mean, that's like a whole nother heal on top of it. By the time you add a crit from a well-geared healer, and then 33% of that, plus Resurgence, plus Mirror's Light, I mean, it's huge. That bard should, as I just showed you, should be barding and keeping healing him out every 9 seconds. One healer should roll Thwart as the mist version, so it helps both of them. That saves a point. And that point right there could be used for Whirlwind's Blessing, which is a huge damage increase, but it's often overlooked because healers don't have enough points. To talk about the common classes real quick, you've got your Cleric, and your Cleric is just pure healing. It's got the largest burst heals. It's got very low defense, low survivability. The reason why I say that the Cleric has the largest burst heals, a lot of people would argue with me that the Templar does, but as I've shown you, I can do the Spell Shield Antithesis 2 instacasts if I want to, but where I have Zeal, the Templar doesn't. Now, the Templar's advantage is the Templar is a much tankier healer. They have very high defense. A Templar can frontline or go in with the frontliners and not be worried about dying. The Caretaker as well is a tanky bard. It's a raid buffer. It's also got very high defense. The Caretaker can go in with the frontline. Underneath the line, I've put a couple of older common healing classes. The Soothsayer and the Confessor were 2 builds that used to have the ability to stealth res. With the new Abyssal res, you don't really need as many Soothsayers or Confessors anymore. As long as you have one in the raid, you can get that one to go away, and that one can Abyssal res a group, and then the healers can instantly get up and chain Abyssal res. And Hierophants were healers with CC options, and they've also kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit, more to the fact that you need to cross buff people now versus a Hierophant basically self-buffing and then preventing buffs on the raid. With the Cleric build, this is my Cleric build. I don't care if you have it. I run it this way for a reason. I'm sure you're going to look at it, you're going to tear it apart, you're going to put points elsewhere. If you do, great. If you don't, great. If you need to ask me questions about it, great. So this is my standard Cleric build. When I am forced to go into a Caretaker build, this is the one I use. A lot of people do tell me that I have points that they would put elsewhere. I have the points I have for a reason. I can, if I need to, I can dump Holy Bolt out of Vitalism and take the 4-point passive in defense. But like I said, pound for pound, as long as you're not trying to self-heal with it, Holy Bolt is just a ridiculous heal for somebody while you're waiting for other things to come off cooldown. Alright guys, and that's it for this part 1 of the healer video. I am really sorry that this video took almost 45 minutes, but I wanted to be very thorough with healing. I'm sure this is going to generate a lot of questions, so feel free to drop into my Discord or PM me on Discord, and be on the lookout for part 2, where I really break down gear and then I teach a new healer how to properly level up. Hey you, yes you, yeah you, I'm talking to you. Hit that subscribe button. Watch a couple of more videos. Go check out our website.